In this topic, we're going to look at the levels of ecological organization. So by the end of this topic, you should be able to define ecology and describe the different levels of ecological organization. You also need to be able to define the terms habitat, niche, population, community, and ecosystem, and give examples of each. And then finally, we're going to look at why tropical rainforests are so important. So what is ecology? Well, this is the study of the interrelationships between organisms and the environment. And the term environment refers to the conditions that surround an organism. So these include both the abiotic, which is the non-living components, and the living, which we say is the biotic components. Ecology is therefore the study of the life-supporting layer of land, air, and water that surrounds the earth, which we call a biosphere. Now you need to know the level of organization in ecology. So you've got organisms, populations, communities, ecosystems, biomes, and biosphere. So try and think of a way to remember this level of organization. So you can either use a mnemonic or an acronym. So the acronym is OPKEB. We're going to discuss ecosystems first. Can you see that an ecosystem encompasses the community and the environment? Well, that's basically what an ecosystem is. It's the community of organisms and how they interact, as well as the environment. So an actual definition is it's a relatively self-contained, interacting community of organisms and the environment in which they live and with which they interact. So it's the organisms and the environment. So here you can see an example of a freshwater pond. This is an example of an ecosystem. It's got its own community of plants that can photosynthesize and supply the organisms in the pond with the nutrients. The nutrients such as phosphates and nitrates can be recycled in the pond with little or no loss or gain between it and other ecosystems. Another example of an ecosystem is a tropical rainforest. Remember that within each ecosystem there are a number of groups of organisms known as a community. So let's define community. A community is all the populations of different organisms living and interacting in a particular place at the same time. So keywords to remember: all the populations, particular place, same time. So here you can see a rainforest community. It comprises all the different populations of organisms. So you've got the jaguar population, the monkey population, snake population, bird population. And they're all interacting in a particular place at the same time. Okay, let's define population. A population is a group of organisms of the same species that occupy the same space at the same time and that have the chance to interbreed with each other. So keywords to remember: same species, same space, same time, and can interbreed. So in a rainforest, you've got a population of monkeys. They're all of the same species, occupying the same space at the same time, and they're able to interbreed with each other. Now, the boundaries of a population are difficult to define. For example, all the mature jaguars can interbreed with each other, and so form a single population. However, woodlice on a decaying log can, in theory, breed with woodlice on another decaying log, but in practice, the sheer distance makes interbreeding unlikely. Therefore, these woodlice in one log can be thought to be a separate population to the woodlice on another log. Now you also need to know habitat. So a habitat is the place where an organism lives. And within an ecosystem, there are many habitats. For example, in a tropical rainforest, the leaf canopy of the trees may be a habitat for birds, such as macaws, while a decaying log is a habitat for woodlice. A flowing river through the forest provides a very different habitat for plants and fish compared to the log. Now, within each habitat, you do have smaller units, each with its own microclimate, and we call these microhabitats. For example, the mud at the bottom of a stream may be the microhabitat for worms, while a crevice on the bark of an oak tree might be the microhabitat for lichen. There's another term, ecological niche. So an ecological niche is the role of an organism in the ecosystem. So this is all the ranges of environmental conditions and resources required for an organism to survive, reproduce, and maintain its population. Now, some species may appear very similar, but their nesting habits or other aspects of the behavior might be very different. Or they show very different levels of tolerance to a pollutant or shortage of oxygen or nitrates. Any differences in niche, however small, limit competition between species, and no two species occupy exactly the same niche. So here you can see how different fish survive in different types of water. For example, the white suckerfish survives in colder, clearer water compared to the buffalo fish, which survives in warmer, more turbid water. Okay, let's move on to why tropical rainforests are so important. Now, tropical rainforests have been estimated to contain 50% of the world's standing timber, and they represent a huge store for carbon and sink for carbon dioxide. Their destruction may increase atmospheric carbon dioxide by 50%. They're also important in conserving soil nutrients and preventing large-scale erosion in areas of high rainfall. And they contain a large gene pool of plant resources, and their potential for the production of food, fiber, and pharmaceutical products is not known. Now, at present rates of destruction, all tropical rainforests, except in reserves, will have disappeared by the middle of the century. So what are the consequences of deforestation? Now, the traditional small-scale slash-and-burn agriculture of the hunter-gatherer cultures caused few environmental problems, but attempts to exploit the forest on a large scale have been detrimental. And the problems have been most apparent in the rainforests of Brazil and other countries of the Amazon basin. These forests have been cleared for rubber plantations, timber extraction, planting of cash crops like cocoa, coffee, and oil palm. And the consequences of deforestation have been soil infertility, floods, soil erosion, and increased sediment in rivers. So the scale of the problem is huge. Now, some areas are being set aside as reserves, and some attempts have been made at replanting. Okay, let's have a look at summary. We've looked at population, community, and ecosystem. So a good way to remember these different definitions is to do flashcards where you have the name on the front and the definition on the back. So if you're a visual learner, then also do the drawings. And if you're an auditory learner, get someone to test you. This is another way to learn the different definitions in order of hierarchy. And it's also quite a nice summary for visual learners. And that concludes our lesson. The end.